Well, first off, I am extremely unqualified to comment on any of this. I have
Mm.
been married for many years. I've never used a dating app, so I don't. So take this
I'm right
for
there
what
with
it's
you.
worth.
Yep.
My
Okay.
perception from the outside is that there is literally nothing that could be worse than the current dating app environment. So I, by definition, am going to give this idea of AI agents dating each other a thumbs up, because the this idea that you're swiping and immediately making decisions on folks, and then it's also like just the dynamics around it are so, to his point, inhuman,
Yeah.
that it's hard to imagine anything could be better. And you know, and so yeah, like are we going back to a world of people meeting each other in person or however, or introduced by friends and family? I don't know, probably not. The
Hmm.
sort of younger generation seems like
From
you
what I
can't like,
understand, it's almost entirely mediated by apps these days. I too
yeah,
have been out of the
and you're
game
like,
for
it's like
too long.
harassment to like ask a girl for a number now. I don't know. Like I said, there's a joke that always floats around Twitter, some variation of this every 6 months, that anyone who is married must look at the dating scene and feel like they caught the last helicopter out of Nam.
Hmm.
That's certainly, like, I could
I
definitely relate
feel
to that. So
that
again, take all
deeply.
I say. I don't know. I don't know how how this all works, but the one thing that does a sort of, I think I might have seen a tweet about this in some regard, is the beauty of this idea of the AIs sort of dating each other is, when and if it doesn't work out, it's the AI's fault. Like, you sort of
Mm.
get over the like, oh, this personal
They need to
rejection, it
fine
was
tune the
whatever. It's like,
algorithm. Yeah.
yeah, Sam Altman, yeah, it's your fault. You can't even. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there is, what's the difference between AIs dating each other versus some sort of algorithmic sort of matching function? We haven't even got to the question, is a system that algorithmically matches people, like, what are the long-term societal effects of that? Like,
Hmm.
these dating apps are, this is sort of like a banned word, but they're eugenic in a certain sense. Like, they're sorting people based on sort of characteristics and whatever it might be. And it's like this backdoor sort of thing. You don't get the sort of, it has that reduced sort of different mixing in different classes or sort of whatever it might be. I don't know. Like I said, this is well beyond my ken sort of as far as personal experience goes, but the current system doesn't seem great.
Yeah.
So, and this applies frankly to a lot of my thoughts on this AI stuff. If you want to compare to like the 90s, or the, I mean, I go to, of course, go to the 90s because given my age, if you want to go to the
Best time
20th
in human
century
history.
and
Yeah.
say that things are, no, we shouldn't go in this direction, it was better before. It's not the end of the 20th century here. The current sort of state of affairs, broadly speaking, in kind of everything, feels like we're at the nadir in many respects.
Yes.
Like so I feel like there's nowhere to go but up. So let's not suddenly lock in and say, okay, we're stopping change now when we're at the we've destroyed everything. I wrote about this, the great flattening, right? We've flattened everything out. Everything is a commodity intermediated by like 5 big tech companies. Let's hold it right here. This is the spot we want to be. That's not sort of my feeling of the matter. I feel like, okay, now that we've destroyed everything, let's use this as an opportunity to rebuild, not to stay down in the muck forever. But
Yeah.
again, I don't know. I'm
No,
40.
I think I
I'm
think
old
that
and
is
married. So
is
what can I
very
say?
well put. I think that's very well put, and I oftentimes am forced to play the skeptic on the podcast, but I think what's most exciting about AI is you look across the digital landscape, and I think everybody, I mean, it goes back to the collective reaction to Apple's ad last week. I think everybody is ready for some sort of refresh and some sort of cleansing fire. And so AI disruption brings with it that promise. It also brings with it some downsides that we've talked about at various points. But it is exciting for that reason. And the Bumble comments were interesting because my first reaction to Whitney Wolf Heard's comments last week was, if an algorithm was in charge of matching me with my wife, we had like one friend in common, and and we have one or two common interests, but we are very, very different people. We're also very happily married at this point, and I don't know that an algorithm would have matched us with one another. But I mentioned that to our group chat, and somebody who is single said, look, he didn't raise the point from Phil, which I think is really good also, which is the dopamine roller coaster. People will just stare at dating apps, and then that becomes sort of an activity in and of itself for younger people, at least the younger people that I've talked to, and it kind of becomes its own addiction.
This is why I
and
don't
people
talk to
end
young
up
people. It's too depressing.
well, yeah, and then they delete the apps for weeks at a time and then say, I'm getting back on the apps. And it's just like a really unhealthy dynamic. So I think Phil is spot on there. If you can short circuit the dopamine roller coaster, that is a win for everybody who's engaged with these apps. But then also a friend who is dating regularly and has to indulge the apps as part of that process says, you have no idea how much time I waste having to swipe through and do that on a regular basis. And if there were some sort of AI agent or assistant that could expedite that process and make it more efficient, like it would save me a lot of time. And so I actually don't think the comments last week were as dystopian as they were portrayed to be. And it would be a net positive in the future. So good hot take from Phil. You know, you can never go wrong disagreeing with Twitter.
I mean, it is interesting because I think one of the big, things that people are excited about is AIs that have more sort of agentic capabilities, right? They can do things that you tell them to go do something and they go do it. And I'm a little bit more skeptical about that because this is where I share a lot of your points of concern before, that there's going to be so many edge cases and so many areas where it's actually hard to describe what you want. And even if you eliminate mistakes, there will still be sufficient mistakes that it's not actually trustworthy. And if you don't actually trust the agent, then like, what are you doing here? Like, there's a lot of AI hype that is about, I just want to do less work. Can you do the work for me? And I feel like that's the part that's going to take longer. The bits about AI that I think are really compelling is doing a lot of stuff at scale, getting tons of iteration. So like the killer AI use case right now that we've talked about is for like self-serve ads, where we already know the way to optimize an ad buy on Facebook is to give them a bunch of creative, let their algorithm cycle through it, figure out what pops, what doesn't, with what demographics, or what sort of like the gazillion things that are in the Facebook targeting mechanism, and then boost that. And it does it like instantly, super fast. What if instead of you giving Facebook 10 pieces of creative, you just put in broad-based or like a product image and you were getting 10,000 pieces of creative? Like, how much more effective could that be? And that is where you're actually leveraging the flip side of hallucinations or mistakes is creativity. It's coming up with sort of things that you didn't think of. And that's leveraging it to be compelling. To me, the most compelling AI stuff is going to look like that. I think it's going to leverage the fact that you can actually be far more iterative and try far more variations of things than you ever could. Not that you're going to be able to sit down on your couch and the AI does exactly what you would have done for you. It's going to be a different kind of work that an AI is able to do. In this case, though, that actually might apply here, right? Like the science of like connecting to someone else is pretty vague and random, right? Like what actually resonates and what doesn't, number one. Number two, it's not like you're actually accomplishing anything with these stupid dating apps with the limited information that you get. Yeah, sure, maybe if you get in a conversation, you can start to uncover a little bit more and then you can get to the business of actually talking, but it feels like it can't get worse.
That's
so
the
if
thing.
You can have your AI out there dating, 5,000, potential partners at a time, and it comes up with a list of these, we got along super well with these ones. It's not like you're going to commit to marriage.
I don't know
there,
that the net result would be all that different.
It feels like it can't get worse. And also, this actually does feel like a use case of the sort of AI work that I envision being productive, which is lots of iterations that just try stuff because you can, because it's cheap.
Well, on that note, to anybody in the audience who is not yet married, the team at Sharp Tech wishes you nothing but good luck going forward. And to everybody who is married, congrats on catching the last helicopter out. Exactly.